because you started talking about All Claire.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
came in here and you didn't like the way things sounded and worked and
yeah.
all of that.
So, and it wasn't that I didn't like it. It just didn't. Nothing wowed me. And then there was a model we still sell called the CMVK, the Crank Master 5000,
Okay.
and it's designed for bass players and drummers. And it was really the still in the market, really the only tool that I can think of that is a pure tool. Like it's for bass players and drummers. And I put that in, and it's that permagrin. You just can't stop smiling because the low end went down below. There's no filter, so it just goes down to
Got
10
it.
hertz, and so you start to feel it a little bit. And as a bass player who started playing bass because of the low end, coming to bass in a weird way through hip hop, that bass was
Sure.
and low
Yeah,
end
that
was a huge deal.
the extra low end, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And then you start playing gigs where they put you in a direct box, and you're like, ugh,
yeah.
you've removed everything. So this all of a sudden brought that back. And then I was like, okay, all right. So then that kind of, you know, formed my thinking in that the other models that I just wasn't huge on wasn't that they weren't good. It just wasn't for me. And so we've worked really hard from the perspective of not everything's going to be for you. It doesn't matter how expensive, how inexpensive. When you find the one, your head starts moving, you start bobbing a little bit. It's like, okay, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came to you because I have been in pursuit, and I thought maybe I'd never get there. I had faith. I've been in pursuit of a custom fit, good quality
Mm-hmm.
in ear that we could recommend to our listeners who were getting started with in ears. You can go and buy the KZs and use universal fits and get yourself out of the gate right with it. And that's amazing that even exists today, because it didn't exist when I started heading down this path 20 years ago. None of the tech existed. I mean, some
No.
of it did, but I really had to work really hard. And I say it on the show all the time that I am ever thankful for my bandmates at the time for tolerating me kind of re-engineering the way I had to listen and all that stuff. Cause I was really, really bullish on getting myself migrated to in-ears, and it probably took a year, but I was determined to make it happen. I am always looking for ways for our listeners to get there without requiring that level of obsessive determination that I
Right.
had, right? Because
Yeah.
I know how much better it can be, but I also know that it is a change, right?
Yeah.
And so investing a lot of time and money and all that stuff is not it's not going to be a successful path for most people. You need to get there and realize how great it is. And so because of that, like I said, I've been in pursuit of the affordable, good quality, custom fit in ear. And I was out to lunch with our mutual friend and guest a couple of times here on the show, Mike Dias, and asked him. I said,
Mm-hmm.
Mike, tell me, is there, an affordable, good quality? Who would I talk to? And without even taking a breath, he said, All Claire. I said, that's fascinating. I have a tab open in my browser with All Claire. I've been on this search. I didn't know how to reach out to him. I said it wasn't entirely clear who they were or what they were doing. And I said, I was actually going to ask you, Mike, about
Yeah.
All Claire.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he brought it up before I did. And so obviously he made this introduction and fast forward, here we are. But I don't want to fast forward. I want to take a minute and describe what I went through recently as I started testing these, because I've used all manner of them: the hard acrylic, the soft acrylic, 2-driver, 12-driver. And I made an error in my testing because these showed up on a Friday. I had just I was in the midst of performing a run of a theater show where the band is on stage. So there's once we start going with an act, I can't really and where they had me, I was dead center upstage. So if I was messing around with anything while I wasn't playing, that was going to upstage everybody else, right?
Sure.
Like the entire audience is now going to look at the drummer who's doing whatever it is he's doing, and they can't figure it out, right? So I have to be the very best audience member,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And direct people's attention to where it should be, which is its own interesting thing. The worst part for me is, of course, I know the show, and there were the run ended. There were a few surprise moments in the show, and I had to make sure I wasn't looking at the upcoming surprise before the audience was supposed to know that it was there, right? You know, so it required a lot of focus, and these arrived on a Friday. We had 3 shows left. We had that Friday, and then 2 on Saturday, and it was the first show that we were doing after a 13-day break in this run, just because of the way the logistics of the theater's schedule worked out. So I was like, okay, this is a little nerve-wracking coming in, playing this show that I haven't played in 2 weeks. You know, our final performance before that break had a couple of hiccups in it, you know, logistical hiccups. And so it was like, all right, we got to nail this one. So I get there. I had to get my drums reconfigured. The way things worked out, we talked about it in the last episode. And so I spent a little time doing that. And then I popped the ears in, and I had tested them out at home for a little bit, but I was like, okay, let's see. And my drum sounded completely different. I was using my Ultimate Ears UE11s for the run, and everything was like, oh man, like it's not that these sound. I can't even be objective about whether these are better or worse. It's like, this is not home. Mm-hmm. And so I thought for this Friday night, getting back in, I'm staying with home. So I did. I played my UE11s that first night, got everything. Everything went great. It was like, okay, the next day, here's what I'm going to do. So you had sent me 3 sets to test. And the one that I really was focused on for the purposes of this experiment was your dual driver, because your dual drivers are $399 for
full custom.
Full custom, $399 dual driver. And what I love is that they are $399 whether you get them the normal dual driver or you get them tuned for low end. And I can compare these prices to, you know, what you'd pay, like, I think it's like $549 at Ultimate for a regular dual driver, and then I think it's $649 or $699 for the ones that are tuned for the low end. And yours are $399 no matter what, the same. And so like from that standpoint, I was like, yes, this is what I'm looking for. But I made a critical error, Andy. I did not go with the dual drivers for the afternoon show on Saturday. I went with the 6 drivers. I went with the Spire. Yep.
Condolences.
Right. And so and to be fair, the 6 drivers are $899 from you folks. My UE11s, which are only 4 drivers, are I think $11.99.
I think
$11 to $12.99. Yeah, yeah, about $1,200 from Ultimate Ears. And so even still, like way less expensive, but not serving the purpose of the path that I wanted to head down. But still, this is the choice. Choices were made. And so I played the show with the Spires. I just flattened out my EQ on my on the send to my ears and just retuned things and got it sounding like, okay, these are my drums. Wow, there's a whole lot more clarity. That was really the problem that I had the night before. Was it was just like, wow, I'm hearing way more articulation than I'm used to. This is going to throw me off. I need to remember how to play this show first before I start messing with other elements. And that choice was the right one for sure. Yeah. But I went with the Spires. I don't know why. I know that logically I should have started with the duals and then gone to the Spires for the evening show, but I went in the reverse. So I did the Spires for the afternoon show, took our break, had dinner, came back and said, yep, I got to do the Dual XBs for the evening show. Now, the Dual XBs, dual driver, $399 price tag. The XB, for listeners who don't yet know, is the Dual XB is the extra bass, is how I interpret that. Okay, great. Yeah. So I did the Dual XBs. There was, I wouldn't say there's less articulation. There was less of it, the sound stage wasn't as wide as the Spires. Sure. Now, really, and again, I should be saying this in reverse, that the Dual XBs sounded fantastic. And had I started with them, I wouldn't have known any better, right?
Sure.
Like they have excellent articulation, fantastic low end. I could hear everything I needed to hear. I was able to keep volumes low, and play and just hear everything I wanted. And it really took me, like, by the end of sound check, I was no longer adjusting from using the Spires to using the Dual XBs. I was like, oh, this is going to be great for the show. I'm going to be super happy with these. And I'm glad that I went through that, because I can tell you folks, and Andy, you're included in you folks, but I mean all our listeners,
Sure.
that these Dual XBs are fantastic. And at $399, I've never used a custom fit in-ear that's going to touch what these things do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy about that. The Spires are absolutely a step up, a huge step up.
We try to be very careful that, you know, and maybe this is, we're not your normal company.
You are not.
That if the Dual XBs work better for you, we're not going to try to sell you into the Spire. You know, we recognize these things are expensive. It's
even $399 is expensive.
Even $399.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
You know, we're getting to a point where we're getting a little more used to spending that AirPod Max, right? I mean,
well, everything costs more these days.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah.
But yeah, we work really hard, and when you look at the line, we say we've got multiple models at multiple price points so that you can find what you need.
Yes.